Okay, verse 4. Verse 4 starts the good news section now, okay? This is the second half of the run-on sentence. And verse 4 literally starts out by saying, but according to his abundant love with which he loved us. So it talks about God's abundant love for us. And it also talks about God's abundant mercy to us. And it says, God made us alive. Notice, that's opposite the idea of death. There's life and there's death. And we said that death means we're separated from God. So when Paul says here that he's made us alive, what do you think he's saying? If death was separation from God, then life is with God, reconciliation to God, right? Yeah, absolutely. So Paul is saying that because of God's love and God's mercy, God has reconciled us and brought us into relationship with him. And Paul says here that this is all about and all by God's grace. Paul says that we have been made alive with Christ, that God has raised us up with Christ, and that God has seated us in the heavenly realms with Christ. We were dead, but we've been made alive with Christ. And we have been spiritually resurrected, and we have resurrection power. Before, we were walking around physically alive, but spiritually dead. And now we're walking around physically alive and spiritually alive. And he says here that we have been seated in the heavenly realms with Christ. Last week we said that the heavenly realms probably is talking about this, what's happening all around us in the spiritual world that we can't see, right? There are angels and there are demons and there's this spiritual reality that we can't see. But spiritually, we now have dual citizenship. We live in this world, but we also live in the spirit world. We're alive in the spiritual world. And God did this for us, it says, so that starting now and throughout eternity, we will be the proof and evidence of God's character traits of grace and kindness. Yeah, he says, God, who is rich in mercy, made us alive with Christ even when we were dead in transgressions. It is by grace you have been saved. And God raised us up with Christ and seated us with him in the heavenly realms in Christ Jesus, in order that in the coming ages he might show the incomparable riches of his grace expressed in his kindness to us in Christ Jesus. So because God has done this for us, we're Exhibit A. We're Exhibit A for God's character traits of love and grace and mercy. Okay? So if anybody ever says, how do you know God's gracious? I'm the proof. I'm the evidence. How do you know God's merciful? I'm the evidence, right? And he says that's not only now, but in the ages to come. So in this spirit realm, if the accuser comes and says, what makes you think God is gracious? I know it. Yeah, exactly. I know it. I know it because his word is here. It tells me, and I know I'm in Christ. And in the future, the new heavens and the new earth, we will be Exhibit A, the evidence of God's grace and mercy and love and kindness.